Did you know that the effects of narcissistic abuse can linger even after the abuser is gone from your life? Narcissistic abuse leaves long-term emotional scars that victims struggle with daily. Many people think that once they escape the situation, healing will be straightforward. But it's often not that simple. The impact of narcissistic abuse can seep into every part of life: relationships, self-esteem, and even how you see the world. Let's break this down a little. Why does this type of abuse linger like an uninvited guest? And what steps can we take to begin healing those deep wounds? Are you ready for number 1? Post-traumatic stress. Dealing with narcissistic abuse is like signing up for a roller coaster ride you never wanted to take, and the aftermath is a bit like being stuck in a horror movie where you can't escape the jump scares. Victims often end up with post-traumatic stress, which can mean reliving those cringeworthy moments through flashbacks or nightmares. As psychologist Dr. Judith Herman says, trauma is not just an event that happened in the past. It is the experience of being overwhelmed in the present. Listen carefully. Focus on grounding yourself in the present through mindfulness techniques, therapy, and building a supportive network to break the cycle of reliving past trauma. Let's talk about number 2, impaired self-identity. When you go through narcissistic abuse, one of the hardest things is how it messes with your sense of self. The abuser plays mind games, constantly undermining your thoughts and feelings, which can make you question your worth and your identity. It's like being lost in a fog, where you can't see the real you anymore. As psychologist Dr. Stephen Hassan points out, your sense of self is your best defense against manipulation. So when that sense of self gets twisted, it can lead to long-term emotional scars that are tough to heal. Take note of this. Engage in self-reflection and affirmations while seeking support from therapy and trusted friends to help rediscover your true self and rebuild your confidence. Let's move on to number 3. Feelings of unworthiness. Narcissistic abuse often leaves you feeling like you're never good enough, and that's mainly because of the constant criticism you face. Over time, this can create a deep sense of unworthiness that sticks with you. If you keep hearing that you're not enough, it becomes a painful part of your narrative. It affects how you see yourself and your abilities. As life coach Tony Robbins says, the only thing that's keeping you from getting what you want is the story you keep telling yourself. Let me teach you something. Challenge the negative beliefs instilled by your abuser by reframing your inner narrative, practicing self-compassion, and appreciating your unique strengths and qualities. Now, let's continue to number 4. Fear of abandonment. If you've been through narcissistic abuse, one of the toughest things you might deal with is a fear of abandonment. When someone you trust mistreats you, it can leave deep scars that make you anxious in new relationships. You might find yourself constantly worried that the other person will leave you or not care about you, even if they haven't given you any reason to think that. As therapist Dr. Rick Hansen says, what you focus on grows. So, if you're focused on the fear of being abandoned, it can cloud your ability to connect with others. To overcome the fear of abandonment stemming from narcissistic abuse, acknowledge and confront this fear through open communication in relationships. Then, gradually build trust by allowing yourself to be vulnerable with supportive partners. You shouldn't miss number 5. Attraction to toxic relationships. After experiencing narcissistic abuse, it's not uncommon to find yourself attracted to toxic relationships again, often without realizing it. It happens because your brain gets used to the familiar patterns of chaos and drama. It makes you unconsciously seek out those same dynamics in new partners. It's like a magnetic pull toward what feels normal, even if it's harmful. As psychologist Dr. Alexandra Katakis says, we are often attracted to what we know, even if it's not good for us. It can lead to a painful cycle where you keep reliving old wounds instead of finding healthier connections. Take note of this. Be aware of your patterns and consciously seek healthier connections. Prioritize self-awareness and surround yourself with positive influences that reinforce your worth. Are you still up for number 6? Difficulty accepting love. If you've been through narcissistic abuse, you might find it hard to accept love from others. After being constantly put down or made to feel unworthy, it can create this nagging belief that you don't deserve affection or kindness. You might push people away, thinking they'll eventually see the real you and reject you as the abuser did. As therapist Dr. Tara Brach says, you can't heal what you don't acknowledge. So recognizing that struggle is super important. Accepting love can feel like a challenge, but understanding that you are worthy of genuine affection is the first step toward opening your heart again and letting others in. Let's keep it moving to number 7. Imposter syndrome. If you've gone through narcissistic abuse, you might struggle with imposter syndrome, where you feel like you don't deserve your achievements. Even if you work hard and accomplish great things, that little voice in your head might tell you it was just luck or that you're faking it. It happens because the abuser likely drilled into you that you weren't good enough, so now you carry that doubt with you. As psychologist Dr. Pauline Rose Clance, who helped coin the term, says, imposter syndrome can be seen as a way of coping with the anxiety of achievement. Listen closely. Recognize that this feeling isn't based on reality and remind yourself that you've earned your success. Here comes number 8. Dependency issues. After experiencing narcissistic abuse, you might find yourself struggling with dependency issues. You tend to rely on others for validation and approval more than you'd like. It often happens because the abuser conditioned you to seek their approval. It's to feel good about yourself without someone else's thumbs up. You may catch yourself feeling anxious if you don't get enough praise or if someone doesn't validate your worth. As therapist Dr. Jennifer Gutman points out, healthy self-esteem comes from within, not from external sources. Remember this. Recognizing this pattern is essential because it can help you shift your focus from seeking validation from others to building your self-worth from the inside out. Moving on to number 9. Avoidant attachment styles. If you've been through narcissistic abuse, you might notice that it affects how you connect with others. It can lead to avoidant or anxious attachment styles. It means you could either pull away from people or feel anxious and clingy. It is because the abuse taught you that closeness could lead to pain, so your brain tries to protect you by either shutting down or holding on too tightly. As attachment theory expert Dr. Sue Johnson says, the primary drive of human beings is to connect with others. Recognizing that these patterns are a response to your past can help you start to change them. Consider this tip. Recognize your patterns as protective responses and gradually practice vulnerability to build healthier, more secure relationships without that fear holding you back. Finally, we're down to number 10. Difficulty seeking help. If you've experienced narcissistic abuse, you might feel hesitant to seek help, and that's often tied to feelings of shame or fear. You may think that asking for support means admitting weakness or that others won't understand your pain. It can make you feel even more isolated. As therapist Dr. Brené Brown says, vulnerability is not weakness. And that myth is profoundly dangerous. It's important to remember that seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness. Many people who have been through similar situations have found that talking to a professional can be a vital step in healing. Keep this in mind. Recognizing that you don't have to face this alone can empower you to reach out and start your journey toward recovery. You deserve support, and there are people ready to help you through this. It's clear that narcissistic abuse has lasting effects, and the emotional scars it leaves can run deep. Those feelings of confusion, low self-esteem, and trust issues can linger long after the relationship ends. But here's the good news. Recognizing the problem is the first step toward healing. It's okay to seek help, whether through therapy, support groups, or just talking to someone who gets it. You're not alone, and brighter days are ahead.